Good day, Ninth and O. This is Michael Knight, one of the pastoral interns here at Ninth and O, and I welcome you once again to Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. And as we can conclude the songs of the church, I want to talk lastly about take my life and let it be. And this reminded me as I was preparing for this week, what is the value of a life? Well, according to the internet, the average median income is 1.7 million USD. With a 40-year career, which is about 90,000 hours spent in one's lifetime at work. But the average human life is approximately 79 years on Earth, which is 28,835 days and just above 692,000 hours. So my question as I was thinking about this week and convicted of these things was, how as Christians do we focus our time and our resources? Well, I think Frances Ridley Havergal had this same type of thought when she said, take my life and let it be. She writes this in 1874, which is actually almost near of the end of her life. She only lived 43 years, so she had a very meager life. But she spent those 43 years fully consecrated to Christ, helping all those in need. And amongst those was an orphanage called Arley House, where there were 10 children in this orphanage. And she talks about this in her journal, that some of them were not converted, and other that were converted were not very joyous Christians. And so she says when she gets there, she prays, Lord, give me all in this house. And she's there for 5 days, and just before she leaves, she's actually retired to her chambers for the evening when the governess of the orphanage comes to her and asks her to come and speak to these two young girls in the house because they wanted to speak with her. She goes to talk to these two young girls who are weeping and crying, and at the end of this conversation that she has with these two young girls, both these young girls receive Christ, become regenerate in the Lord, and as a result, they rejoice together. And Havergal is so elated that when she returns to her bedchambers, she says she writes in her journal she cannot sleep. And actually what she ends up doing is rejoicing and singing songs of the Lord, and writes this very hymn, Take My Life and Let It Be. And so she says, she writes in the journal that her heart chimed at the end on ever, always, all to thee. And so anyway, as we get here, we have 6 4-line stanzas, all using the imperative take, where Havergal is petitioning and devoting her life all to God. In the first stanza, she says that she's going to use her time to the utmost, endless praise from the heart and soul. In the second stanza, she uses her actions, her hands and her feet, swift and beautiful for thee. In the third stanza, she says she's going to use her voice, her lips, and her message and her service to the Lord. And in the fourth stanza, she says she's going to use her money and her mind, not withholding even a mite, all her resources and abilities for God's purposes. And in the fifth stanza, she uses her heart and her will, only pursue His kingdom and His ways. And lastly, to conclude, in the sixth stanza, she says that she wants her love to be her only riches, giving all she is to God, ever, only, all to thee. And at the end of this life, she writes a letter to a friend in 1878, and she says, the Lord has shown me another little step, and of course I have taken it with extreme delight. Take my silver and my gold now means shipping all of my ornaments to the church missionary house, including a jewel cabinet that is really fit for a countess, where all will be accepted and disposed of for me. I don't think I've ever packed a box with such pleasure. And I think, as many have pointed out, potentially 2 Samuel 19:30 for your scriptural references may have been where Havergal was going with this hymn, but essentially it's a story where David loses Absalom, and as a result has some issues with inside of his own self. He gets rebuked, and at the end of that, he comes back to the people, and he has given the land away as a consequence for this person's actions. But then he's going to give part of that land back. And this person says that let him, the other person who was given the land, let him take it all. That David's reign was more important than his personal treasures, and that he only cared that David was on the throne. Is God's reign enough for us? Are we willing to give it all to God? Our life, our monies, our time, all to God for His purposes. You know, consecrated means to be dedicated, to represent a body. And so when she says, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Let my life be dedicated always only to my King. Thank you, Nathan. Have a great week.